On December 7, 1971, a chilling silence overtook the suburban town of Westfield, New Jersey. Christmas decorations lined the quiet streets, and homes were filled with the spirit of the holiday season. But behind one of those grand houses, hidden behind festive lights, was a disturbing mystery that would soon be uncovered. Breeze Knoll, a stately mansion owned by the List family, had been the source of quiet concern for weeks. The lights had been left on day and night, yet there was no sign of life. No one had seen the family, and something was wrong. The hymn echoing from inside only added to the eerie atmosphere, making the neighbors feel like they were living in a ghost story. On that cold December day, after weeks of speculation, the neighbors finally called the police. What the authorities would find behind the doors of the List mansion would shock not only the town but the entire nation. What was supposed to be a peaceful family home had turned into the scene of a gruesome massacre. Before we continue, we are a new channel, and your support means a lot to us. If you're enjoying this content, please subscribe and give us a like. As the police arrived at Breeze Knoll, they noticed immediately that something was off. The house was cold. The heating had been turned off, yet every light in the 19-room mansion was blazing. The officers entered cautiously, stepping into the eerie silence, only interrupted by the constant hymn playing from the record player. As they moved through the grand hallways, the eerie atmosphere of the home left a mark on them. But nothing could prepare them for what they would find next. In the ballroom, laid out on sleeping bags, were the lifeless bodies of Helen List and her 3 children, Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick. Each had been shot execution style. Upstairs, they found Alma List, John's elderly mother, also killed in her bed. The discovery was beyond horrifying. But where was John List, the patriarch of the seemingly perfect family? The family's bodies had been lying there for nearly a month, decaying in the cold mansion. The sight of the once vibrant family, now lifeless, sent shockwaves through the town. The police could hardly process the horror that had unfolded behind the doors of this quiet suburban home. Yet the discovery was only the beginning of one of the most notorious manhunts in American history. In 1965, John List and his family moved to Westfield, New Jersey, purchasing the grand Victorian mansion known as Breeze Knoll. The mansion was a symbol of status, reflecting John's desire to maintain the appearance of a successful, devout family man. The List family was well regarded in the community. John taught Sunday school at the local Lutheran church, and the family regularly attended services. To the outside world, they were the embodiment of the American dream, devoted, successful, and living in a beautiful home. However, behind the doors of Breeze Knoll, the family's life was far from perfect. Helen's health was deteriorating. She had contracted syphilis from her first husband, which left her with severe medical complications. As her health worsened, so did her reliance on alcohol and prescription drugs. The once vibrant woman John had married was now struggling with her illness, and their marriage became strained. At the same time, John began to lose control over his children, particularly his eldest daughter, Patricia. Patricia was 16 and had ambitions of becoming an actress. John, a deeply religious man, saw these ambitions as sinful, believing that Patricia's interest in the arts would lead her down a morally corrupt path. The tension between father and daughter grew, adding to the mounting pressures within the household. Outwardly, the List family maintained their image, but internally, the cracks were starting to show. John's religious fervor and rigid moral code began to clash with the growing modern influences his children were embracing. This disconnect would only deepen as John's financial troubles became increasingly impossible to ignore. By 1971, John List's life had begun to unravel at an alarming pace. While Breeze Knoll stood as a testament to his success, it was also a constant reminder of his mounting failures. John had lost his job as a bank vice president due to restructuring, and despite his qualifications, he struggled to find steady work. The world was changing, and John, who lacked modern skills, felt increasingly obsolete. Every day, John would put on his suit, kiss his family goodbye, and pretend to go to work. In reality, He spent his days aimlessly sitting at the train station, reading newspapers or wandering through the city. The facade of normalcy was crumbling, but John refused to admit the truth to his family. To him, bankruptcy was not just a financial failure, it was a moral one. He could not bear the shame of admitting that he had failed to provide for his family. Bills began to pile up. Breeze Knoll, the very home that symbolized the List family's success, had become a burden. The cost of maintaining such a grand mansion, combined with Alma's financial support dwindling, placed even more pressure on John. His deep religious beliefs only heightened his sense of guilt and failure. He started to believe that his family's financial ruin was not only inevitable, but also a direct consequence of their straying from God's path. John's rigid Lutheran faith led him to view the world in stark terms of right and wrong. As he saw his family, particularly his children, embracing more modern, sinful behaviors, he became convinced that they were headed for eternal damnation. The thought of losing his family, both in this life and the next, was more than John could bear. He became obsessed with the idea that only through their deaths could he save their souls. On the morning of November 9th, 1971, John List woke up with a clear plan. It was a day that would change the course of his family's life forever. The day began like any other. John's 3 children left for school, unaware of what was about to unfold. Inside the house, John waited patiently, knowing that he was about to commit the unthinkable. Helen, his wife, was the first to fall victim. As she sat at the kitchen table drinking her coffee, John approached her from behind with a revolver. Without hesitation, he shot her in the back of the head. Helen slumped over, lifeless, her body sprawled across the kitchen floor. John, ever methodical, dragged her body into the ballroom and laid her on a sleeping bag. It was here that he would later bring the rest of his family. Next, John climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, where his mother Alma lived in a private apartment. At 84 years old, Alma was frail and unaware of what had just happened downstairs. As John entered her room, he greeted her warmly before pulling out his gun and shooting her in the head. Alma's death was quick and without struggle. John tried to move her body downstairs, but she was too heavy, so he left her where she lay, covering her face with a towel as a final, disturbing gesture of respect. With his wife and mother dead, John spent the next few hours preparing for the return of his children. When Patricia, 16, arrived home first, John met her at the door. Patricia had always been close to her father, but recently their relationship had become strained due to her rebellious nature and desire to become an actress. As she stepped into the house, John shot her in the head, just as he had done with her mother. Her dreams, her youth, were gone in an instant. Next came Frederick, 13, who had always looked up to his father. He, too, was killed as soon as he entered the house. Finally, John Jr., 15, arrived home from school. Unlike the others, John Jr. put up a fight. He tried to defend himself, but John shot him multiple times, ensuring that his son would not survive. The brutality of John Jr.'s murder would later puzzle investigators, as it seemed more personal, more vicious than the others. John then carefully placed the bodies of his wife and children on sleeping bags in the ballroom, arranging them as if they were merely sleeping. Alma, however, remained upstairs. It was a scene of chilling precision, one that would haunt those who discovered it for years to come. After the murders, John sat down, ate dinner, and cleaned the house as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. The next day, he turned off the heating to preserve the bodies, turned on every light in the house, and set a hymn to play on repeat. With his family now dead, John List executed the final part of his plan, his disappearance. Leaving behind a 5-page letter addressed to his pastor, John explained that he had killed his family to save their souls from the corruption of the modern world. He believed that by doing this, he was sparing them from hell and ensuring their place in heaven. The letter was cold, calculated, and filled with religious justification for the heinous acts he had committed. John then withdrew money from his mother's bank account, packed a few belongings, and drove to John F. Kennedy International Airport. He left his car in the long-term parking lot, but never boarded a flight. He vanished without a trace, leaving behind a home filled with death, a town filled with fear, and a nation that would soon become captivated by the mystery of his disappearance. For nearly 18 years, John List evaded capture. The case grew cold, and while the town of Westfield tried to move on, the legend of the Breeze Knoll Mansion haunted the community. The house, abandoned and filled with dark memories, burned down in a mysterious fire years later, leaving behind only the chilling story of the List family massacre. It wasn't until 1989, nearly 2 decades after the murders, that John List's story would resurface. The case was featured on the popular television show America's Most Wanted, and a forensic sculptor created a bust of what John might look like after years on the run. The episode aired, and millions of viewers across the country tuned in, fascinated by the story of the family annihilator who had vanished into thin air. The forensic bust proved to be key. A tip came in from a woman in Denver, Colorado, who recognized her neighbor, Bob Clark, as the spitting image of John List. The FBI quickly followed up on the lead, and on June 1st, 1989, John List, living under the alias Bob Clark, was arrested. After nearly 18 years on the run, he was finally brought to justice. John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He never showed remorse for his actions, believing until his death in 2008 that he had done the right thing in God's eyes. The story of John List remains one of the most chilling and infamous cases of family annihilation in American history, a reminder of the dark secrets that can lurk behind the most picturesque suburban homes. If you found this story as shocking as we did, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. We have many more stories of tragedy and resilience to share with you. Thank you